Hey, CDA, and today we're playing some more Mindustry, and last time around I set up my little launching facility over here and in several other places. I'm not going to show all of them, of course, but it does mean we should be able to import stuff through the landing pads wherever we kind of want. Now, on that note, let me go to the research tree over here, there we go, and see what we want to unlock next. Okay, so here's what I decided doing. I, of course, needed to unlock the tier 4 unit building, and, well, that cost a lot of phase fabric, but I have plenty of that now. I'm actually producing it in several different locations, and I just upgraded a lot of that as well. And I also decided to unlock the Vela, I'm not sure how you pronounce that, but this is a unit that can not only repair other ones, it has a nice ability that it fires a laser, which is cool, of course, but it also causes fires. And this is the main thing that attracted me, other than the fact that it can repair the other ones, which is really convenient. I've noticed that the enemy is very inept at fighting actual fires itself. I have plenty of problem with that myself, so no shaming here of the enemy or anything like that, but the fact that it can cause fires is going to cause a lot of additional damage to their bases, I think. So this is why I'm going to go with this unit. Of course, I want to unlock all the other ones as well, but I need a lot more plastinium to do that, and well, we're producing plenty of that, so it's just a matter of time. But I'm just gonna start off with this one for now. Speaking of different units that want to be upgraded, I don't actually have access to the tier 3 naval units just yet, so this is an additional reason to go for this particular level, the coastline, because that is supposedly going to allow me to unlock this one. What do you need for this one? The tetrative. Okay, so this is just a matter of upgrading the next tier of building, but if I want to have, well, higher tier naval units, I'm gonna need to capture this level, so this is why we're going here next. Okay, I am fully loaded up, and let's go explore yet another map. We're going to have to defend against 30 waves on this map, and actually I think this might be a little bit challenging because there's not really an easy choke point which I can store up. There's a lot of water here, of course, and a lot of this is deep water where you can build in. And there seem to be two ways pretty much for the enemy to come through, at least with naval units, like this, or the long way around like this. And honestly, I'm not entirely sure which one is the long way around. It feels like this route will be longer, but it's probably relatively close. I do think that this is going to be the main bottleneck. That being said, if there's any ground units spawning, then those will likely go across the coast into this area. So I'm going to have to block off this choke point and this choke point, and honestly that's not really a problem because any air units will be flying through the middle over here. So that means I kind of have to set up some air defense, at least in this area as well. All in all, that is going to be pretty demanding in terms of how much I set up, so we better get to work. Okay, so step one, I'm gonna set up some power. I'm going to go straight for the impact reactor. And I'm doing that, of course, with some initial plastinium production. I'm also going to make sure I have a little bit of power buffer so I can actually charge those initial reactors, and then we should be able to set up everything else we need. Seems I underestimated a little bit how much power it actually takes to get everything going, so I'm going to need to expand a little bit on my initial power production. Yeah, I can do that with some coal generators, maybe with some temporary RTGs. Not entirely sure what's the best way forward. I should probably next time around just start out my main base with some more RTG generators just to kickstart everything a little bit faster. But yeah, it's interesting to see that as our technology develops, our starting strategy also needs to adjust to that. And well, we have the first wave coming in as I am starting up my power, which is a problem in itself, I guess. Let's check out this wave though. Oh, these are actually some pretty high level units already. Well, let's hope they don't reach my base before I'm actually able to start up some power, because otherwise this is going to be a massacre. Okay, the power is starting up. I have a couple of lancers ready to go. Let's pause once again. Let's see where the enemy actually is. They are actually going through the top route, which I expected they would, so that is good to know. That means I can kind of build my power line all the way through here and then set up some meltdowns probably over there and work from there on. Actually, getting this defense up and running will not be trivial between the short time on the waves on eradication level and actually the amount of distance I have to cover with all of my power supply, but yeah, I think that should be very nice to keep everything bottlenecked over here in terms of giving me some area to play with. in the rest of the level. Okay, a little bit of a time jump. As you can see, we're already on wave 4, even though it was just 2 minutes. But between intercepting some flying units that decided to take a stab at my base, so I had to improvise a couple of scatters over here. For just a couple of tier 1 units, but still they got through. And my power line being destroyed by some naval units that managed to just basically just burst their way through without getting killed in time by the meltdowns. I think just one of the meltdowns was up at the time anyway. Yeah, this was a little bit hectic, but now I do have this first line up and running. I think if I just close off this area, I might actually be able to close off this area as well and have the enemy units go through here. Although it is always risky to do that because you never know if they might decide that this way is actually quicker. I do hope that by adding in a couple of lancers over here, that should make everything a little bit more resilient to things sneaking through. And if that is the case, I could also just consider blocking everything off altogether. At this point, however, I am running low on silicon, so it is important that we go over to plan B, which is mass receiving items from all the launch pads that I just set up. So you can see there's a lot of silicon and graphite already coming in. There's some thorium. I'm also importing titanium. Pretty much everything we're going to need to build anything on this map is now being imported. Not at a super high amount, so I do need to be conscious of the fact that I do need to actually build stuff on this map still. But this is going to make my life a whole lot easier. Then silicon is always a bottleneck for everything, and like I said, I do need to make sure I have some production in my level itself. I just set up a full belt of silicon production over here. I also made sure I have some basic materials like copper, lead, and titanium coming in. And for the rest, I'm for the moment going to rely on the production that I'm getting from outside. Because as it stands, I'm already on wave 10 and the waves are becoming significantly larger, and I need to make sure I upgrade my defensive line a little bit because things are sneaking through. I don't want to completely block everything off because then I might get nasty surprises with the enemy going a completely different direction. So yeah, I am going to have to make sure there's more stuff shooting at the enemy as they go towards my base. Okay, so here we go. I added a couple of foreshadows to the mix that should definitely increase my anti-air and anti-ground defense. These are super high damage single target type of thing, so I also added in a couple of ripples just to make sure I also have some AoE to support everything. And of course I don't want everything burning down, so I'm probably going to have to add in some waves as well. I'm also going to utilize these incoming resources to start building some units, and I'm going to do that by really utilizing the little facility that was already here. I took out the remaining buildings that I don't really need, but everything else bloop, is instantly then constructed. Well, at this point the game is trying to tell me I should probably be fine, but I don't trust it, so let's just make sure I keep it going, because I just set up a nice little factory, as you can see over here, that is hopefully going to construct me some tier 3 units. Now the nice thing about setting up these units to be built from things that you actually import from your other factories is that every unit that is being built here is essentially free when it comes to the resources of this level. Now as you can see, I have a little bit of trouble of actually getting in the titanium, but there we go. There was a little bit of that, but we're definitely going to need a lot more titanium than what I'm getting now. Luckily, we have plenty of that right next door, and I'm going to use all of these resources over here, or at least some of them, to kickstart a little bit of actual local production. Okay, so those are tier 3 naval units in production, and now let's have some fun. I am going to get myself some tier 4 ground units, the ones I just unlocked at the beginning of the level to be exact. Now, I do have a problem in the meanwhile, because as you can see I have some ground units coming in, and exactly what I thought would happen is now actually happening. They are going to go through the inside, and I don't really have a lot of defenses there, so I am going to have to set some of those up. Just to make sure I get it through the initial wave, I'm just going to set up a couple of lancers, though it should be fine for this particular wave. It's only 8 units, so nothing too major. It's only the tier 3 units, I believe, and I also have some tier 3 units of my own to help with defending. Oh, okay, the units did not decide to go for the route that I was expecting them to take. They're actually going to go straight through the middle over here. Which is also where my mass drivers are supplying me with ammunition. So, yeah, you know, that's not really what I was going for, but, yeah. So let's scramble some defensive lines, and hopefully that will be enough, because otherwise I do have a pretty big problem. The nice thing about these foreshadows is though they have an insane range. So as you can see, they're actually helping me out with defense. And yeah, okay, well that works. Make sure that everything doesn't get on fire over here, but if that doesn't happen, then we should be just fine. Honestly, the most annoying about this level is the fact that I get all of these random flare units flying all over the place, attacking all different facilities from different angles. Now, honestly, it's not really a problem taking them out, but in the meanwhile, as you can see, they do a fair amount of damage. So, you know, definitely challenging in a very interesting, or at least original way. However, in the meanwhile, I still can keep those enemies off my back, honestly. It's not too much of an issue, and I keep adding a couple of foreshadows to my mix, mostly because I don't really know what to expect from the boss wave. If it's going to be an air unit, it's going to be a problem. If it's going to be a ground unit, probably not, but it is going to go through here. I am expecting, however, that to be a naval unit, like, well, the level would kind of fit, and that means it also has to go through all of my tier 3 and tier 4 units. Look, we have a Vela, I don't know, but we're going to need a couple more of those, and as you can see, I am still producing units. Why are you not producing anything? What are you lacking? Or you need silicon. Yeah, honestly, silicon is my major bottleneck. I was trying to build a thorium factory, or thorium power factory, I should say, over here, but I fed in the thorium before I completed my cryofluid, and as most of you should probably know, that is a very bad idea. Everything blew up. Luckily, I didn't build it any closer to my unit production facility, otherwise it would have been an even bigger mess. Of course, it does help if you actually repair the buildings you have, so the silicon can reach your production facilities. That might help constructing those tier 3 units, or tier 4 units actually. Okay, time to stop messing around and actually get things going. So there you can see there's actually silicon coming in again. All of these units are now being produced. I even have some tier 4 units up and running. Do I have some more than that already? No, just the first one, but everything is now in production. It's really weird on eradication that it feels like you're spending a lot of time building stuff sometimes, but because the waves are coming in so fast, it's actually just like the levels actually take something around half an hour in terms of game time, but in terms of play time, it is several times that, because you're just designing and redesigning stuff and reacting to what happens. Speaking of time flying, I didn't actually realize we were already up to the Guardian wave. Let's see what Guardian we actually have. We have a whole bunch of these flying units. These are just the tiny ones. I guess the Guardians are in here. Those are probably tier 4 naval units, I guess. Well, they should be going straight through my defenses over here, so I think we should be fine. Famous last words and so on, but yeah, these foreshadows are going to go a very long way at doing significant damage to the Guardian, I think. And even if they aren't, we also have a lot of these naval units on standby here, along with some tier 4 units of my own. So yeah, I think, yeah, they're melting away. Yes, no problem whatsoever. And there we go. There is still 20 enemies. Oh, hold on. Well, actually, these guys should run into these defensive lines over here or here. It's really interesting that I am no longer worried whatsoever about these units. They just melt away in front of Lancers. And yes, Lancers, so the very ancient units that we barely have been using at all anymore. And oh, that's interesting. They were actually attacking those. But as you can see, the foreshadows take out several of them before they even reach me, and there we go. The Lancers are not even going to fire, I think, because the meltdowns are just going to melt them away. And there we go, sector captured. Now, I have to admit, this was probably one of the messiest levels I've played so far on Eradication, and I think there's two reasons for that. First of all, I have a feeling that setting up thorium reactors might be a lot more convenient than trying to set up these impact reactors like I've been doing so far. I might be switching to impact reactors as soon as I have a little bit of thorium reactors coming up and running, but honestly, thorium reactors need so little resources. Just a tiny little bit of thorium is all you need, of course along with some water, but the cryogen is super easy to produce, and I could easily be running double the amount of thorium reactors that I have over here. And again, you barely need any resources for that. I also think that tier 4 units, while super strong, are kind of a trap in a way because these things suck up a massive amount of resources. Now, that might not necessarily be an issue because, of course, these things are super duper cool. But given the amount of resources that you need, you definitely don't want to, at least I don't think you want to start producing them from the get-go. I'm actually not entirely sure. It's interesting though, because um, you do start out with a lot of resources. So if you want to use these on the offense, then that might actually be a decent way of doing it. But at the same time, you also need a boatload of resources to set up your defenses. And it kind of feels like you're going to do either one of those, but not both at the same time. I might be wrong on this though. I do think it's really interesting that I didn't actually build that much local production, but I've mostly been just relying on what I've been importing, with the exception of the very basic resources, as well as thorium and metaglass. I actually added a small factory to make that because I was running really low on that. But if you do that really early on, then it's actually super easy this way to set up your factory. So I look forward to iterating on this a little bit more to get the order and efficiency down a bit further. It also will definitely help if we have a level where the spawning point isn't miles away from our choke point, because that just made it a lot easier, or a lot harder I should say, to defend against all those air units, and that just made everything even more messy. On top of the fact that my base is all over the place, so that doesn't help either. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to set up some more local production over here, but that's also going to allow me to export a lot more while I'm preparing for the next level, so we can import even more resources into that level. So before we end this episode, I just want to give you a quick rundown of what I actually did to upgrade this zone. So I added a lot of plastinium production, a lot of other base production honestly, and a lot of ways to export that through a launch pad. So that just means that I can again utilize that in different zones as well. In the meanwhile, I'm still importing all of those resources from the other zones as well, with a double plastinium conveyor actually, because of the amount of stuff just coming in. I'm also producing a little bit of pyrite and search alloy I should say, over here, just to make sure I have some local production on top of what I'm importing. So I am actually producing everything now locally as well, just to make sure I have a little bit of everything incoming. And there you go. There is a lot of power production over here happening as well. I'm actually not entirely sure what the optimal way of producing power is, which is probably a good thing. I am really not sure if the impact generators are optimal, but the thorium reactors have the problem that they tend to blow up if you are not careful. So if there's any problem with power, these things are liable to blow up, and then we really have a problem. On the other hand, just the raw thorium is super easy to produce. They don't need that much cryofluid either. So from that perspective, this is super easy. But at the same time, 10 differential generators actually produce more power. So this is about 11,000, well this is 9,000, it's not a big difference, but still. And the only thing this needs is pyrite, which is super cheap and easy to make. And don't forget, the pyrite mixture only needs 12 power to produce. At the same time, I do need 3 different types of resources to get that going, along with the the cryofluid. And you do need more cryofluid in order to fuel these differential generators. I am fairly certain, however, that the answer is not going to be the RTG generators, because you can see these generators over here produce about the same power as this layout or that layout. And other than the fact that it takes up more space, and quite a bit more space actually, the resources you need to build these things are quite expensive as well. So if resources are not an issue and space is not an issue either, then sure, this works, and that actually requires only a tiny amount of thorium to run. But still, I think this is just complete overkill, and you're probably supposed to rely on either these or the impact generators. Anyway, let me know in the comments actually what type of power you prefer for your startup phase as well as your more mid-game phase. The end game doesn't really matter honestly, because at that point you're winning anyway. Either way, this new zone, even though I actually am only using about half of it, is a pretty nice new launching zone to kind of start conquering the world with, for the main reason that, unlike the Windswept Isles, I can actually produce every single resource I have available on this map as well, other than also importing it. So not only, like I said, I'm importing it here, I'm also making things like face fabric here. I do have quite a bit of thorium on this map, unlike on the other islands. So yeah, This map, by the way, is also completely safe. It is not under attack from anything, even though there is a different level next to it. There's no base there. So there's not going to be an attack from the enemy ever on this map, which makes it very convenient. I could just completely remove all the defense I had over here. I stacked my units somewhere in the corner so they didn't get in the way. So I never have to worry about being attacked here. And I can just start accumulating more and more resources, which honestly is a good thing because I still have quite a bit of expensive units to unlock, which is exactly what I'm going to do between now and the next episode. Okay, TDA from the future. I've been sitting around waiting for my research to complete, and I decided I am no longer going to do that because I did unlock a couple of units. I also worked my way quite far into the unlock of the tier 5 units. But I did some math, and look at this. I need 40k plastinium over here. I need another 50k over here, another 50k over here, then another 50k over here. That is literally hours of waiting for the plastinium to be done. And of course, I could just continue building more plastinium generators as well. That would actually quite help a lot with that. But just building buildings for unlocking resource is the most boring thing I can think of doing. So I'm not going to do that. I am just going to play the next couple of levels. Hopefully the lack of some of these tier 4 units is not going to bite me, but honestly I don't expect it will. I have the Vela available. I think this is actually going to be a pretty decent unit for attacking enemy bases, so this is why I unlocked that first. I also have the ship unlocked because that has a massive range and does a massive amount of damage, so any type of map where I can use these to actually attack or defend, honestly, is going to be super useful. And I also think these units might be very nice for defending. They actually have a pretty decent DPS. They don't have a massive range, but they do attack everything. So between these three, I think I have unlocked everything that I might need. And of course I am going to unlock the other ones as well, but that will just have to wait a little longer. And I don't even want to know how much resources the tier 5 units are going to cost me, honestly. But yeah, it is what it is. Anyway, this was a very randomly kind of messy episode once again. Apologies about that. That seems to be what just happens to me when I play this game. But either way, if you are still here, you are awesome, and I do hope to catch you in the next one.